Hey, we're in the Permaculture Orchard, and you probably look at this and think it looks a bit out of control, but in fact it's entirely planned, and we're using permaculture systems here, which I'm going to explain to you, to generate not only very healthy soil but very healthy crop growth and maximise the yield from a small area of land with very small amount of input in terms of machinery, chemicals and time. And that's the beauty of permaculture, because what we're doing is we're maximising the output from the land and we're minimising the input, and the environmental impact is very positive. We generate carbon storage and we generate habitat, and I'll talk you through some of the benefits that we've created here. So succession is a really important part of what we're doing. It's an ecological principle, and we start off with pioneer species like this Cooch Grass, which ordinarily would be a weed, but it's very good at colonising bare ground, and it creates a great habitat, and it's an annual, so it has a short life cycle, and it rambles through the grass and through the brambles that are already there, and it generates a lot of carbon rich material which will then rot down later on, and that helps to stop the soil oxidising, which is very important. We don't want the soil to oxidise by exposing it to air, because that alters the profile of the nutrients and the biology and really impacts the trees later on. So we're preventing that with that cover crop. And then what happens next is we get the nettle. The nettle is kind of the ultimate regenerative plant, very efficient at drawing out nutrients at depth, very good at finding nutrients and building up the biology of the soil, and giving us the opportunity to store carbon, because nettles are very good at storing carbon. They liberate a lot of carbohydrate into the soil with lipid, which is exactly the kind of thing that builds up humin, the most important organic fraction for the soil. If we want to store nutrients in the future and make the soil darker, nettles are the thing to use. And then they're followed on by the brambles, but of course the brambles are not what we want, so we remove the brambles. So we selectively remove them from the succession, this progression towards woodland. And we hold the progression at a particular point. So over here we've got bare ground, which was planted up with simply early rhubarb, mulched around with bracken from the site, very high in potassium, keeps the water in, helps to mulch the rhubarb. It was a free of charge resource which I'm using. But where we've got bigger gaps, no vegetation really, I input this Phacelia. And if you look at Phacelia, it's probably the most useful of all of the cover crops, because you get bees on there, you get predatory insects, wasps, etc. But you also build up an incredibly good soil underneath the Phacelia. So it's a brilliant accompaniment to the rhubarb and the trees. And the trees which we're putting in here are cordon pears and apples. And this is Josephine de Malines, which is a great old winter pear. It really enjoys this environment. It looks very different to a conventional orchard, but the soil here is already rich, and we're keeping hold of the carbon with all of this activity. And then gradually the rhubarb will become the dominant crop, and we'll cut down these cover crops and keep them below the growth of the rhubarb. So the rhubarb will become the dominant crop, and this will become the climax vegetation equivalent of the tree. It's a great system, and it's going to work really well.